Travel and Things in association with Rugged Wear, Real People, Real Clothing, Real Solutions presents In Conversation With. I'm your host, David Batsoffen, and today I'm chatting once again to Willie Labuschagne, the author of this unbelievably impressive and beautifully written book, The Soul of the Lion. It's published by Tracey MacDonald Publishers. And if you don't have this on your bookshelf, you should already. Willie, good morning. Welcome to you.
Good morning, David. Nice talking to you again.
It always is. And I have to just tell the viewers that I don't normally read a book twice, and specifically not when it's in such short time. I interviewed you. I went away on a week-long trip. I took your book with me, and I read it once again from cover to cover, but I read it intensely. And it is singularly one of the most beautifully written books I have ever read, Willie. And knowing that it's your first novel, I am, could I say, superbly impressed with what you have produced. Really and truly, an amazing work. And I think people who know you or know of your work, when they read this, are going to go, I did not know that. Because there's a lot of that, the behind-the-scenes stuff, and that's what we're going to pick up on today, looking at Pretoria Zoo, looking at Johannesburg Zoo. And I would like, with your permission, to share a quote that you end off the book with. He says, now trying to find it again. I had it yesterday. Where is the thing? Oh, here we go. But once this generation has passed, and the next one follows, and the one after that, and yet another one, and they enjoy the wilderness and the wonders of wild nature, then they too will know that before them there were people who carefully preserved precious parts of South Africa for the next generation to enjoy and to cherish. Then they will know that long before them there was an Oom Lappies who followed the call within him, laboring with love and generosity to understand and share the joy of creation. Now, that was written for Veldtrust in 1963. And when I read that, sitting in the game reserve in the middle of Baluli, I cried. I really and truly did. And there were tears of absolute joy and pleasure that somebody like your father engendered this much in a nation. So well done. And well done to you for continuing in his footsteps.
Thank you, David. I think we touched on that previously as well. And
yeah.
In fact, in my book, I've spoke more about my father, and I submitted my manuscript to a very well-known person in the publicity arena, and he suggested that I should tone that down because the book is about me, and perhaps he was correct in a sense, but I could write a book about my father. What he has personally done for conservation in South Africa, it was just absolutely immense. And he was such a guiding force to me. And his love and his sincere concern about the environment was just absolutely so energetic to him. So I owe everything that I have done and succeeded in conservation to these simple ways of introducing me to the environment. And I'm glad that I've included that quotation because that really spells out the type of person that he was.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that he died at the age where he was still very, very much in line for further development, that he could never experience the way that I have actually proceeded in his footsteps.
It's always the case. But now you see, for me, there were both extremes in your book. There was that joy and love that and emotion that I felt, joyous emotion, reading about your dad, reading about the way you'd said goodbye to your dad when you went off to Kalahari, and then reading about what happened to you at the Joburg Zoo with a trip to America. That made me so angry that I almost threw the book through a window. Because
David,
it was so pertinent for the time that you were used as a pawn to get somebody else a trip overseas. You virtually had to sleep on the street, and they were in five-star luxury. But what amazed me named the people. Are they dead that you're not scared of them anymore?
One person is still alive, but yeah, I also toyed to the idea, should I include that or not? But I think it was important to share that threshold which I've experienced. But and thank you for all the compliments that you started your interview with, and I've shared a lot of interesting responses from the readers, which actually now guides me for my book number 2 that I am working on very hard. And there will be certain issues that I think once you read that, you will throw the book out. But it all happened to me, David. And when I sit back and I share this information with my partner, other than saying I've just had a wonderful life, but when I realized how often I've been exposed, not only to dangerous animals, but to events that I will stay very, very clear from talking about politics. But at some time, that certainly came into my life. And I have always been very, very neutral about politics. And when I was singled out in book number 2, where I nearly lost everything in my professional life, and this interests me, that when I actually sort of discover myself in writing these stories and thinking back, and I realize, wow, I've survived it all.
You have indeed. You're almost like that polar bear that used to patrol back and forth in that ridiculous cage that he had. Absolutely. Subterranean, dark, dank cage that they had before they were moved to their new enclosure.
Yeah. That polar bear, that was the first effort that we launched. And I couldn't elaborate on these stories. Time just doesn't allow that. But when we launched the Polar Bear Trust, that was the whole issue, was to generate funds, which was highly successful. The mayor, Alan Gadd, at that time, he hooked onto that. And we launched so many projects for generating funds to build a new polar bear enclosure. And it was also one of these things. We designed an incredible facility. And it was just at that time when I actually applied for the position as the director of the National Zoological Gardens, when this delegation went overseas, and they kept on saying, Willie, you have to come with us. But I knew that I had already been appointed, but they wanted to keep it quiet. And I had difficulty in saying, no, I can't. And they couldn't understand it, which is a pity, because in the end, the original design was not followed, which was it was going to be awesome. But I'm glad that eventually they have managed to build this new enclosure. But that started off with the Polar Bear Trust fundraising, the first time ever that we ventured onto such a project. But you're right. I mean, the polar bear is one of the many exhibits that had to be renewed, because that was just absolutely.
I know, it was terrifyingly bad. It really and truly was. And in retrospect, that was just the way zoos were built back in the days. They were just huge iron bars, and with no thought for the animal and its well-being. I remember just after, I think, the polar bear enclosure was built, they locked the polar bears away, and they allowed us to dive in the polar bear enclosure to pick up all the coins and stuff that people had thrown in to attract polar bears' attention. People are ridiculous, They throw cameras in, and then they go, oh hell, we've thrown a camera in, now we've got nothing to take a picture with. It was in the days before cell phones. But I also remember, Willie, and I think you were there at the time when they did the New Year's Eve, or not necessarily New Year's Eve, but they did those evening walks with like a progressive dinner. You'd start off at the entrance with drinks, and then you'd go to the baboon enclosure and have something to eat there, and then to the elephant house, something to eat there. And it was just a wonderful way to spend an evening at the zoo.
You're right. In fact, I referred to the night tours that we started at the Johannesburg Zoo. And it happened also, one of these issues, if I can refresh your memory, when John Boberg walked into my office one day and said, there are some people that want to visit the zoo at night. And I said, you must be mad. Who wants to visit the zoo at night? And he said, that's what they want to do. And I said, well, let me think about it.
Right.
And I forgot about it. In fact, he was back the following day. And he said, what's your decision? I said, well, tell me about well, why would people want to visit the zoo? And then when I start thinking about that, the majority of mammals are nocturnal animals.
Yeah.
And it just started like fire. And we continued with that at the National Zoo. And we actually extended it to the point that people were allowed to sleep at the zoo. And this is one of the amazing things, David. You know, one can talk about good zoos that should continue and bad zoos that should close down.
Yeah.
But through all the years, I have found that there is such an incredible necessity to provide such a facility to the city dweller, not even city dwellers, but to people in general, because they do relate to the environment. They relate to animals, and give them the opportunity. They will jump at it. And we had these night tours that were fully booked 3 weeks in 3 months in advance.
Yeah.
And it was just incredible to see to what level you can actually offer the opportunity to the general public to enjoy the zoo in whatever way they want to do that. And when I think back about this, what amazed me is that the general visitor that used the night tours were the highly paid executives. They don't have time other than to do it at night. It's just a wonderful experience. And then at 10 o'clock, the tour is finished around a bonfire, and there they become friends.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Meet strangers, and they become friends. So it was just, to me, it was just absolutely a wonderful opportunity to spend my life. And I know that we spoke about the nature conservation, and where, if I had to reconsider my life, would I be happier as a biologist in the national parks of South Africa, or would I be happier as director of the National Zoo? And to me, there's no doubt in my mind that in my position as director of the zoo, a good zoo, an excellent zoo, was to me bringing people and animals together in a way that national parks cannot do. They offer a different
exactly. It's a different experience.
Yeah, you know, it's a great, fantastic to drive around Kruger and to view animals and to enjoy that. That's great. I love doing it. But as a professional life, I could do so much more in bringing man and animal together in the facility of the National Zoo. And that was, to me, a very rewarding, extremely rewarding opportunity.
But you know, Willie, you talk about experiences, and you have stupid people that try and climb out of their vehicles in Kruger Park to get a close-up of a lion or something, and then they wonder why they get eaten. And I remember at the National Zoo years ago, many years ago, there were some guys teasing one of the chimpanzees. And if you remember the old chimp enclosure, it was quite a way back from the humans. And these guys were showing the chimp that they had food, and then they'd eat it. And at one particular point, the guy turned his back on the chimpanzee. And that chimp picked up an enamel mug, flung it at the guy, and hit him on the back of the head. I fell about laughing. And the guy was so angry, he wanted to climb over the railing and now attack the chimpanzee, who had literally fallen over at being so accurate. It was, you know, you go, how stupid are you, firstly, to do that sort of thing? And then you want to tackle a chimpanzee that's safe and protected from idiots like you. You must have experienced that on almost a daily basis.
Well, fortunately, not daily basis, but people do stupid things. Absolutely. They do that in the wild, and they do that in a zoo as well, sometimes deliberately. As I've mentioned in my book also, that there are cases where people seems to have deliberately want to commit suicide.
Yeah.
But this is Sorry, then. This is the problem that zoo directors face world over, and that is by trying to create a natural environment.
Yeah.
Do away with these bars and terrible fences. Create a far more open environment, and then people, they test that. They climb over, and sometimes they fall into it.
Yeah.
There was a case not that long ago, well, a few years ago, of this baby youngster that fell into the zoo, and the director
Either Willie's able to hold his breath, or we've lost
Willie
Willie for a
which
moment.
was terrible. I mean, it was criticized.
Willie, we just experienced. You're back. I was about to say we're just experiencing a bit of a technical glitch with Willie. So I'm chatting to him about the book Soul of a Lion. It's reflections of a life lived with animals. And if you haven't got this, if somebody hasn't already bought you this as a Christmas gift because you've hinted about it, go out and buy your own copy, really and truly, because it's well worth having on your shelves. It'll make you laugh, it'll make you cry, it'll make you angry, it'll make you happy, and you'll start reassessing your own life based on what Willie's gone through. How long were you at the Johannesburg Zoo for?
In total, I think 14 years.
Okay.
7 years. The original part was as a zoologist,
Yeah.
and then the latter part as the curator or then director. There are 14 years in total.
Okay, and you must have seen an awful lot of changes, because I know when you joined, or when you started at the zoo, the uniforms were like almost military-like, and it's very difficult working when you're supposedly dressed as an army person.
And with ties. It is absolutely ridiculous, but I think this is just a reflection on
society of the time.
On I see that there's a thing coming up, internet. My internet is unstable, so I don't know whether
you're breaking up, but don't worry. I'll talk over you. If you vanish, I'll make comment, and then we'll either pick it up or we'll have to stop. But
okay.
we'll continue. People understand with Zoom nowadays that it's not always 100% perfect, and that there are issues. It's the same as when you do talk radio. Sometimes the phone lines are not that great, but you struggle through it.
Okay.
The transition for you from the Johannesburg Zoo to the National Zoo in Pretoria, firstly, is the Pretoria Zoo still the National Zoo? Having been there about 5 years ago and seeing the state of decay that it was deteriorating into.
It is the National Zoological.
Okay. And have they made any changes to the zoo in sort of the last, I don't know, 10 years? To improve the facilities for those animals? Because some of those environments are still, if you go right to the top to where the lions are, I don't know, it didn't quite work as well as the changes did at the Johannesburg Zoo. And I wondered how you felt about those when you left, and the legacy that you left behind.
David, it's a very pertinent question, a very good one as well. And did on 3 occasions, I think, and I'm sad to say that I could not see any new development taking place, none whatsoever, other than simple maintenance.
Yeah.
When we were there, we had about 5 to 6 projects going annually. And we had nice notice boards to apologize to the public about the redevelopment program.
Right.
And some of the visitors said, well, tell us when it's finished and then we can come back. And we said, it's never going to finish. You keep on developing a zoo because new ideas come through, new concepts, new architectural opportunities. So a zoo is an ongoing thing. And it can get outdated very quickly.
Yeah.
So I have often said that let's concentrate on the worst parts of the zoo And if we do that, it becomes the best part. And now your better ones are no longer number one. So you've got to keep on.
Yeah, I hear what you say. Willie, we're about to be cut off time-wise by Zoom. So once again, thank you very much. It's just one of those days, load shedding, all of that. The book is called The Soul of a Lion. It's published by Tracey MacDonald Publishers, Reflection on a Life Lived with Animals. And as I say, it's singularly the best book that I've read this year. And thank you so very much for giving me the opportunity, A, to chat to you again, and B, to become immersed in your history. And I look forward to books 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Thank you, David.
My guest today on In Conversation With has been Willie Labuschagne, once again, the author of The Soul of a Lion.